Set the tone with vivid, present-tense imagery and an immediate hook that demands attention. So before we unravel this intense story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Invite viewers to share their thoughts in the comments, and if they've ever experienced something similar, don't hold back, spill the tea. Now get comfortable, maybe grab a warm drink, and let's dive deep into tonight's roller coaster of emotions. I remember the day my world shattered. I was only 8, clutching my worn-out backpack with one hand and my father's rough, calloused fingers with the other. It was one of those cold, gray mornings that seemed to suck the life out of everything, the kind that makes even the air feel heavier. I had no idea that the walk we were taking wasn't to the park like he'd promised, but to the front steps of St. Mary's Home for Children. As we approached the massive iron-wrought gates, my steps faltered. I felt his hand tighten around mine, the grip less comforting and more like a vice. My heart pounded, a small, terrified bird trapped in my chest. The cold metal creaked as the gate swung open, and I instinctively clung to his side, my tiny legs struggling to keep up with his determined stride. "Dad, where are we going?" I managed to squeak out, my voice trembling as I looked up at his stony profile. He didn't respond, just kept marching forward, his jaw-set eyes locked on the looming brick building ahead. I tried to tug back to slow us down, but he just yanked me harder, dragging me through the courtyard where dozens of other children played, their faces hollow, their eyes too old for their small bodies. We stopped just short of the thick oak double doors, and for the first time that morning, he looked down at me. There was something different in his eyes, a mix of guilt and cold determination that I couldn't fully grasp at that age. "Listen, kid," he said, his voice rough like gravel scraping against metal. "Things are complicated. Your mother and I can't take care of you anymore. This is for the best." I felt the air leave my lungs, the words hitting me like a physical blow. My small fingers tightened around his hand, my mind racing to make sense of what he was saying. I opened my mouth to protest, to beg him not to leave me, but the words stuck in my throat, choked by the terror creeping up my spine. Before I could even muster a whimper, the doors swung open and a stern-faced woman in a starched gray dress stepped out. She exchanged a brief, knowing glance with my father, then knelt down to my level, her eyes sharp and appraising. "Welcome to St. Mary's," she said, her voice as cold as the stone steps beneath my feet. "We'll take good care of you." I felt my father's hand slip from mine, the warmth I had clung to my entire life vanishing in an instant. He straightened his shadow, stretching long and ominous in the weak morning light. Without another word, he turned on his heel and walked away, his footsteps echoing in the empty courtyard as he disappeared through the gates. I tried to run after him, my small legs stumbling over the uneven stones, but the woman's iron grip locked around my shoulder, holding me back. "Let him go," she whispered, her breath cool against my ear. "You're home now." I watched him disappear, his broad shoulders hunched against the wind, his form shrinking with every step until he was just a speck against the bleak horizon. My legs gave out, and I collapsed onto the cold, unforgiving stone tears streaming down my cheeks, mixing with the dust of this strange new world I had been forced into. That day I died a little inside. I lost the warmth of my father's hand, the soft murmur of my mother's lullabies, the only family I had ever known. But what hurt the most was the bitter realization that I wasn't their real child. The whispers from the other kids, the sharp, cutting remarks from the staff, the cold, indifferent looks, it all made sense now. As the heavy doors of St. Mary's closed behind me, sealing my fate, I felt a flicker of something new ignite in my chest, a burning, simmering anger. I would survive this. I would prove them all wrong. I would make them regret the day they walked away from me. The years that followed were a blur of cold nights, thin blankets, and whispered prayers that no one ever seemed to answer. St. Mary's was a place where innocence went to die, where the walls seemed to absorb the screams of broken-hearted children and echo them back in the dead of night. I quickly learned that survival here meant hardening your heart and keeping your head down. I became the quiet one, the shadow that slipped between classes and cafeteria tables unnoticed. But even shadows have weight, and I felt every bit of it, the whispers behind my back, the way the other kids eyed my secondhand shoes and threadbare shirts. I clung to the few memories I had of my parents, replaying the warmth of my father's hand, the soft floral scent of my mother's hair, as she tucked me in at night before the world went cold. It wasn't long before I realized that St. Mary's wasn't just an orphanage, it was a machine grinding down the lost and forgotten until they fit neatly into the world's harsh expectations. The staff watched us like hawks, their eyes sharp and unforgiving, quick to punish even the smallest infraction. I learned to blend in, to move like a ghost through the halls, my presence marked only by the soft creak of old floorboards and the occasional rustle of my too big hand-me-down clothes. But even in this bleak place, life has a way of forcing its way through the cracks. I discovered a small, forgotten room in the back of the library, a tiny, dust-choked space with a single window overlooking the weedy courtyard. It became my sanctuary, a place where I could lose myself in old, yellowed books and fading memories of a time when I felt loved. I devoured everything I could find, from thick encyclopedias to battered paperbacks, desperate to escape the walls that seemed to close in tighter each day. One book in particular changed everything. It was an old, leather-bound volume with cracked pages and a faded title, The Art of War by Sun Tzu. At first, I picked it up out of boredom, flipping through the dense, archaic prose without much interest. But as I read, the words began to resonate with me. Each line a quiet, whispered promise that I could reclaim my life if only I learned to think like a warrior. In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. That line hit me like a punch to the gut. I read it over and over, my fingers tracing the faded ink, the words carving themselves into my heart. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of something other than fear or anger. It was hope, raw and sharp, a fragile thing that burned just beneath my skin. I began to change. I started asking for extra chores, volunteering for kitchen duty and late-night cleanups, not because I enjoyed the work, but because it gave me access to the parts of the building most kids never saw. I learned where the staff kept the keys, the way their footsteps echoed differently on the tiled floors when they were angry or relaxed. I became a ghost with purpose, moving through the shadows, gathering knowledge like a soldier preparing for battle. But even warriors have weak moments. I still cried, sometimes clutching my thin, lumpy pillow to my chest, whispering my parents' names into the darkness, praying for a miracle that would never come. I still flinched when one of the older boys shoved me in the hallway, or when a staff member's hand came down too close to my face. I still felt the deep, aching loneliness that had taken root in my heart the day my father walked away. And then one rainy afternoon, everything changed. I was in my hidden corner of the library, the rain tapping against the cracked glass like impatient fingers, when I overheard two staff members talking in the hallway. Their voices were low, their words tinged with the bitter edge of gossip. Did you hear? One of them whispered, her tone dripping with barely contained disdain. His parents were some rich couple. Adopted him out of guilt, I bet. Dumped him the second they had a real kid of their own. I felt the air leave my lungs, my vision swimming as the words echoed in my mind. I had always wondered why they left me, what terrible secret I had uncovered that made me unworthy of their love. And now here it was, the cruel, unvarnished truth. I was a replacement, a placeholder, a second choice. Rage burned in my veins, a white-hot fire that chased away the last remnants of my innocence. I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails cut into my palms, tiny crescents of pain grounding me in the moment. I wouldn't just survive this place, I would conquer it. I would claw my way out of this hellhole and build a life so grand that the parents who abandoned me would one day look at me with regret in their eyes, their hearts twisted with the bitter knowledge that they had thrown away a diamond, mistaking it for a worthless stone. As the rain continued to beat against the window, a slow, bitter smile crept across my lips. I had a plan now, a purpose that burned brighter than the flickering bulbs in the hallway. I would rise, I would escape. And when the world finally knew my name, I would make sure my parents regretted every single step that took them away from me. The years that followed felt like a slow climb up a crumbling, jagged cliff. Every day I pushed myself harder, driven by the fire that had ignited in my chest that rainy afternoon in the library. I studied relentlessly, diving into textbooks on economics, psychology, and business management, anything that might give me an edge in the world beyond those grim walls. I scraped together every ounce of my mental strength, determined to be something more than just another forgotten orphan. I hit 18 with a worn-out duffel bag and a head full of dreams sharper than the barbed wire that lined the orphanage walls. They handed me a stack of forms, a thin envelope with a few crumpled bills, and a handshake as hollow as the echoes in those long, empty hallways. Stepping out into the real world felt like a slap to the face. The city was louder, colder, and more indifferent than I had ever imagined. But I had long since grown numb to rejection, to the sting of being overlooked. I crashed on the threadbare couch of an old friend I had met during one of the orphanage's few outings to the public library, a fellow misfit who had escaped a year before me. Together, we scraped by, splitting instant noodles and cheap beer, our laughter ringing out in the cramped, cockroach-infested apartment that reeked of stale smoke and forgotten dreams. It was during one of those long, sleepless nights that I stumbled upon my first real opportunity. I had picked up a side gig at a local printing shop, running the ancient, clattering machines in the back room for a few crumpled bills at the end of each week. One evening, while sifting through the stacks of discarded prints and old invoices, I noticed something odd, an unmarked envelope stuffed into the corner of the storage closet. Curiosity got the better of me, and I tore it open, my fingers trembling with a mix of fear and excitement. Inside, I found a stack of unsigned contracts and poorly photocopied tax returns, the kind of documents that whispered of shady deals and under-the-table cash. My mind raced as I pieced together the implications. Someone at the shop was running a side hustle, skimming off the top, laundering money through the business. I should have been scared. I should have reported it. But instead, I felt a thrill, the same kind of rush I imagined a predator feels when it first catches the scent of fresh blood. This was my shot, my chance to carve out a piece of the world for myself. Over the next few months, I started piecing together the puzzle, slipping into the shadows whenever the manager wasn't looking, eavesdropping on hushed conversations, and silently slipping copies of incriminating documents into my duffel bag. I learned the language of deceit, the rhythm of manipulation, the delicate dance of power that kept the shop's crooked owner on top. Then one cold December evening, when the city's lights glittered like shards of broken glass against the inky night, I made my move. I compiled everything I had: tax records, bank statements, shady loan agreements, and walked straight into the tiny, smoke-filled office where the manager sat. His feet kicked up on the cluttered desk, a cigar clamped between his yellowing teeth. He looked up, squinting through the haze, and opened his mouth to bark at me to get back to work, but I cut him off, tossing the thick stack of papers onto his desk. They hit the wood with a satisfying thud, the pages fanning out like the wings of a wounded bird. "You've been stealing from this place for years," I said, my voice steady. The fear I had lived with for so long, now a distant, hollow echo. "And if you don't cut me in, I'll make sure every single one of these ends up in the hands of the IRS. His face turned an alarming shade of purple, the cigar slipping from his lips and landing with a dull thunk beside the stained coffee mug that served as his ashtray. For a long, breathless moment, I thought he might lunge at me, that his meaty fists would close around my throat and choke the life out of me right then and there. But then his shoulders sagged and he leaned back in his chair, a slow, bitter chuckle rumbling up from his chest. "You've got guts, kid," he rasped, wiping the sweat from his brow with a shaking hand. "Fine, you're in." That was my first real taste of power, the first time I felt the thrill of seizing control, of bending someone else's fate to my will. It was intoxicating, addictive, the high I had been chasing without even knowing it. Over the next few years, I grew bolder, smarter. more ruthless. I branched out, investing my meager earnings into risky startups, learning to navigate the world of high-stakes business deals and backroom negotiations. I built my empire brick by bloody brick, each success a middle finger to the parents who had cast me aside like trash. By the time I turned 25, I had clawed my way into the upper echelons of the corporate world. My name whispered in the same breath as men twice my age, men who had been born into privilege and power. I owned a string of successful businesses, each one a testament to my refusal to be forgotten, to be erased from my own story. Then one crisp autumn afternoon, as I sat behind the polished glass desk in my corner office, overlooking the glittering city skyline that had once felt so cold and unwelcoming, I received a call that shattered the carefully constructed walls I had built around my heart. The receptionist's voice crackled through the speakerphone, hesitant, almost fearful. "Sir, there are 2 people here to see you. They say they're your parents." For a long, suffocating moment, I couldn't breathe. I felt the years of anger, of grief, of bitter, simmering hatred rise up inside me like a tidal wave threatening to crash down and drown me in memories I had spent a lifetime trying to forget. I took a deep breath, my fingers tightening around the polished edge of my desk, the cool glass grounding me as I forced my voice to remain calm. "Send them up," I said, my words cutting through the static like a blade. As the line went dead, I leaned back in my chair, a slow, wicked smile spreading across my lips. I had dreamed of this moment for years, had rehearsed it 1,000 times in my mind. They had come back, and they would regret it. I sat there, the polished glass desk cool beneath my fingertips, my pulse a slow, steady drumbeat in my ears. Outside, the city hummed with the frantic energy of 1,000 lives unfolding simultaneously. But in my office, time seemed to slow each second, stretching into an eternity as I waited for the door to swing open. When it finally did, I almost didn't recognize them. My mother, once a vibrant woman with a laugh that could light up a room, now looked frail. Her hair streaked with gray, her eyes ringed with dark circles that spoke of too many sleepless nights. My father, the man whose hand I had clung to as a child, had grown smaller. His shoulders hunched, his face lined with deep, regret-laden furrows. They stepped inside, their eyes darting nervously around the sleek, minimalist space, taking in the polished floors, the artfully arranged plants, the wall of floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the city like a living, breathing painting. It was a world away from the cramped, cluttered living room where I had spent my early years, curled up on the scratchy, faded couch, listening to the low murmur of their voices as they whispered about money, about sacrifices, about me. I didn't rise to greet them. I didn't even smile. I simply steepled my fingers, leaning back in my leather chair as I studied them, my eyes cold, my heart a solid, impenetrable mass of stone. For a long, painfully awkward moment, none of us spoke. My mother's eyes glistened with unshed tears, her hands twisting the worn strap of her faded purse, her gaze flicking nervously from the window to the polished mahogany shelves lined with first edition books and gleaming awards. My father shifted his weight from foot to foot, his gaze fixed somewhere over my shoulder, his jaw clenched so tightly I thought I heard his teeth grind. Finally, my mother cleared her throat, the sound small and fragile in the vast, echoing silence of my office. You've done well for yourself," she stammered, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. We heard about your success. We're so proud of you. Proud. The word hit me like a slap, sharp and stinging, leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. Proud. They had abandoned me, cast me aside like a broken toy, and now years later they had the audacity to waltz back into my life, hoping for a warm welcome, for a second chance. I felt the old rage flare up inside me, that simmering, slow-burn anger that had kept me awake at night as a child, staring up at the cracked ceiling of the orphanage dormitory, my tiny fists clenched beneath the thin, scratchy blanket. But I forced myself to stay calm, to keep my voice low and steady, my expression unreadable. "What do you want?" I asked, my words slicing through the tension like a blade, sharp and unrelenting. They flinched, exchanging a nervous glance, my father's jaw working as he struggled to find his voice. "Son," he began, his voice rough, the words catching in his throat like shards of broken glass. We made a mistake. A terrible mistake. We thought we were doing what was best for you." I felt a bitter, humorless laugh bubble up in my chest, the sound low and harsh echoing off the polished walls. "Best for me," I repeated, my tone dripping with disbelief. "Leaving me at a cold, uncaring orphanage. Abandoning me like I was nothing. That was for my best." My mother's tears finally spilled over, tracing thin, glistening trails down her cheeks as she clutched at her husband's arm, her fingers digging into his sleeve as if he were the only thing keeping her upright. "We were young," she whispered, her voice choked with grief, her eyes wide and pleading. "We were scared. We didn't know what to do. We thought we were giving you a better life, a fresh start." I felt my hands clench into fists, my nails biting into my palms, the sharp, stinging pain grounding me, keeping me from screaming at them, from throwing them out of my office and slamming the door behind them. "A better life." I spat, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "Do you have any idea what I went through? The years I spent alone, cold, hungry, scared out of my mind, wondering why my parents didn't love me enough to keep me." They flinched again, their faces paling, their bodies shrinking beneath the weight of my words. My father opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. My voice shaking now, the fury I had buried for so long finally breaking free, roaring through me like a wildfire. "You abandoned me," I snarled, my chest heaving, my heart thundering in my ears. "You threw me away like garbage, and now you come crawling back, expecting me to welcome you with open arms, to forgive you, to let you back into my life." My mother collapsed into the leather chair opposite my desk, her shoulders shaking, her face buried in her trembling hands, her muffled sobs filling the silence that followed my outburst. My father remained standing, his fists clenched at his sides, his jaw set, his eyes burning with a mixture of shame and defiance. "We're sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking, his head bowed. "We're so sorry. Please, we just want a chance to make things right, to be a family again." A family. The word felt like poison on my tongue, bitter and toxic, a twisted reminder of everything I had lost, of everything I had been forced to become. I leaned back in my chair, my gaze cold and unflinching, as I stared them down, my heart a hollow, aching void. "You don't get to decide when we're a family," I said, my voice low and dangerous, each word a carefully sharpened blade. "You lost that right the day you left me at that orphanage. I owe you nothing." I watched as the truth of my words hit them, their faces crumpling, their bodies seeming to fold in on themselves, their tears soaking into the polished leather of the chair, their gasps of despair echoing through the room. I could have ended it there. I could have thrown them out, had my security escort them to the street, let them wander back into the city, their hearts shattered, their dreams of reconciliation in ruins. But I didn't. Instead, I leaned forward, my fingers steepled, my gaze cold and unblinking. "Get out," I said, my voice low and deadly, my eyes locked on their broken, weeping faces. "And don't come back." They stumbled to their feet, their movements jerky and uncoordinated, their tears still streaming down their ashen faces as they turned and staggered out of my office, their sobs echoing down the hallway, growing fainter and fainter until the door swung shut behind them, sealing them out of my life forever. For a long moment, I simply sat there, my heart pounding, my mind racing, my hands trembling on the cool glass surface of my desk. And then slowly, I leaned back in my chair, a small, bitter smile spreading across my lips as I whispered the words I had waited years to say: "Goodbye." In the days that followed, I half expected them to come back, to push through my office doors with fresh pleas and tear-streaked faces desperate for a second chance. But the days stretched into weeks, the weeks into months, and the phone remained silent, my email inbox free of their cloying apologies. I should have felt relieved, should have basked in the satisfaction of finally severing the last fragile thread that had once connected me to my past. But instead, I felt empty, hollow. Like a soldier returning from war, the adrenaline fading, leaving behind only the jagged, splintered pieces of a life torn apart. I threw myself back into my work, the long hours, the high-stakes negotiations, the ruthless boardroom battles that had once been my only refuge from the ghosts of my childhood. My company flourished, my net worth skyrocketed, and my name became a whispered legend in the corridors of power. But late at night, when the city's lights had dimmed and the steady hum of my office building had died down to a low, comforting buzz, I would catch myself staring out at the darkened skyline, my reflection, a ghostly, hollow-eyed specter in the polished glass. It was during one of those long, sleepless nights that I received an unexpected visitor. I had just poured myself a glass of expensive single malt scotch, the amber liquid catching the soft glow of my desk lamp when my phone buzzed, the harsh, insistent vibration cutting through the thick, whiskey-laden air. It was my assistant, her voice hushed, almost hesitant. "Sir, there's someone here to see you," she says it's important. I felt a flicker of irritation, my fingers tightening around the heavy glass tumbler, the ice clinking softly as I brought it to my lips. I had no time for late-night surprises. No patience for the desperate pleas of former friends or spurned lovers. But something in my assistant's voice gave me pause, a note of unease that set my nerves on edge. "Send her up," I said, my voice low, my heart thudding, a slow, steady rhythm in my chest. The elevator doors slid open a few minutes later, and a small, shadowed figure stepped out, her heels clicking softly against the polished marble floor. She paused at the threshold of my office, her silhouette framed by the harsh fluorescent lights of the hallway, her features still obscured by shadow. "Come in," I said, my voice steady, my fingers drumming an impatient tattoo against the cool glass of my desk. She stepped into the light, her face pale, her eyes wide, and frightened, her hands trembling as she clutched a thin, crumpled envelope to her chest. It took me a moment to recognize her, to connect the trembling, haunted woman before me with the sharp-tongued, fierce-eyed girl who had once haunted the halls of St. Mary's. Her whispers of defiance, a quiet, constant thorn in the sides of our overseers. "Emily," I whispered, my heart stuttering in my chest, my mind reeling as 1,000 forgotten memories crashed over me, sharp and painful as shards of broken glass. She nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears, her hands still clutching the envelope as if it held her very soul, her knuckles white against the thin, crinkled paper. "I'm sorry to bother you," she whispered. Her voice small, her eyes darting nervously around my office, her body tense, her shoulders hunched as if expecting a blow. But I had nowhere else to go. I felt my heart clench, a cold, sharp ache blooming in my chest as I watched her struggle to keep her composure, her thin, fragile frame trembling beneath the weight of whatever had driven her to my door. "What happened?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended, my heart pounding, my mind racing, as I tried to piece together the puzzle of her sudden, unexpected appearance. She hesitated, her eyes flicking to the window, the darkened city beyond her lips trembling as she struggled to find the right words. I thought I could do it," she whispered, her voice cracking, her shoulders shaking as a single tear traced a slow, glistening path down her pale cheek. "I thought I could make it on my own, that I could be strong like you. But it's harder than I thought. So much harder." I felt my chest tighten, a wave of unexpected, unwelcome guilt crashing over me. The bitter, acrid taste of regret rising in my throat as I watched her crumble before me, her once sharp edges worn down to nothing by the grinding, relentless weight of the world. Without a word, I stood my chair scraping against the polished floor, the sound sharp and jarring in the otherwise silent room. I crossed the distance between us in a few quick strides, my hands closing gently around her thin, trembling shoulders, my heart aching at the feel of her fragile bones beneath my fingers. "You're not alone," I whispered, my voice rough, my throat tight, the words scraping against my vocal cords like shards of broken glass. "You're never alone." For a long, breathless moment, she simply stood there, her body shaking, her tears soaking into the fine, tailored fabric of my suit. her quiet, hitching sobs echoing off the polished walls of my office. And then slowly, she lifted her head, her eyes wide and shining, her lips trembling as she whispered the words I had never dared to say out loud. "Thank you." And in that moment, as I held her trembling form in my arms, her thin, fragile body pressed against my chest, the cold, hollow ache that had haunted me for so long finally began to thaw the ice around my heart, cracking, splintering, shattering into 1,000 tiny, glittering pieces. I had spent years building walls, fortifying my heart against the pain of betrayal, of abandonment, of loss. But as I held her, as I whispered quiet, broken promises into her hair, I realized that I had not truly severed my ties to my past. I had simply buried them so deeply that I had almost forgotten they existed, their sharp, jagged edges still capable of cutting me to the bone. I had been wrong. I had not risen above my past. I had merely run from it, fleeing from the ghosts of my childhood, from the cold, indifferent faces of the parents who had cast me aside. And in that moment, as I held Emily in my arms, I realized that I could no longer run. That if I truly wanted to be free, if I truly wanted to move forward, I would have to face my past, to confront the demons that had haunted me for so long. As the city lights flickered outside my window, casting long, twisting shadows across the polished floors of my office, I closed my eyes, took a deep, shuddering breath, and whispered the words I had never thought I would say. "I forgive you." Story 2. The number glared back at me from my phone screen. 0 points were... Oh, I blinked hard. Refreshed the banking app and checked again. Still 0. The college fund my parents and I had built together since I was 12. Gone. My name is London, and this was supposed to be my moment. After years of perfect grades, volunteer hours at the hospital, and careful planning, I'd finally been accepted into St. Sebastian's medical program. The acceptance letter still sat on my desk, its crisp edges mocking me. I called my mother first. She answered on the third ring, her voice too bright. "Darling, I was just about to call you Mom. The account is empty." My voice cracked. "What happened to my medical school fund?" The pause lasted exactly 2 seconds too long. "Oh, sweetie. Your father and I meant to discuss this with you. Why don't you come over for dinner tonight? Rowan has some exciting news." "Of course." "Rowan." My stomach clenched. I drove to their house in a daze, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The familiar colonial-style home loomed ahead, warm lights beckoning through the windows. Inside, my mother was setting the table with the good china, the set reserved for celebrations. Rowan sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He barely glanced up as I entered. "Hey, sis, did Mom tell you?" "Tell me what?" But I already knew. The sick feeling in my gut told me everything. My father emerged from his study, wearing that proud smile I'd seen so rarely directed at me. "London. Perfect timing. We're celebrating tonight," the account I said flatly. "What happened to my medical school fund?" Mom bustled in with a steaming casserole. "Sit down, everyone." "London, darling, this is wonderful news. Rowan's been accepted into the Berlin Institute of Contemporary Arts. It's super exclusive," Rowan added, finally looking up. "They only take like 5 students a year. It's basically a guaranteed career launch and the tuition." My voice sounded distant even to myself. Well, Dad cleared his throat. "That's what we needed to discuss. The opportunity was too good to pass up. The connections he'll make, the exposure. You took my money." The words fell like stones. "My medical school fund. Our money," Mom corrected gently. "The account was joint. Remember, and this is a family decision. Rowan's talent—" "My talent is once in a generation," Rowan interrupted. "The admissions director said so himself. You should see what I'm planning for my first installation. I'm thinking mannequin heads covered in shellfish, a commentary on consumption and decay." I stared at my brother, then at my parents. They were beaming at him like he'd just cured cancer. The irony wasn't lost on me. "I start medical school in 6 weeks." My voice was barely a whisper. "Oh, honey, Mom reached for my hand. I pulled back. You can defer a year. Work. Save up. Maybe take some time to really think about whether medicine is the right path. It's such a demanding field for it. For a what, Mom? A woman? Dad shifted uncomfortably. That's not what she meant. We just think Rowan's opportunity is time-sensitive. Art is about momentum striking while the iron's hot. Medicine will always be there. I stood up so abruptly my chair scraped against the floor. 8 years, I said. I worked part-time jobs for 8 years, saved every penny. You promised to match what I saved. And we will. Mom's voice took on that soothing tone she used when she thought I was being difficult. Just not right now. Rowan needs. What about what I need? Rowan rolled his eyes. God, don't be so dramatic. It's just money. Just money. Just my future. Just everything I'd worked for. I looked at each of them. Really looked. Mom's practice concerned Dad's dismissive discomfort. Rowan's entitled indifference. Something inside me shifted, like a key turning in a lock. You're right, I said quietly. It's just money. They relaxed visibly, probably thinking I was accepting their betrayal. They didn't notice my hands trembling beneath the table or the way my smile didn't quite reach my eyes. 2, Rowan. Dad raised his glass. Berlin won't know what hit it. I raised my glass too, but I wasn't toasting my brother. I was making a promise to myself. They saw me crack that night, but not how I sharpened the pieces. I should go, I said, standing. I have an early shift at the clinic tomorrow. Already leaving, Mom frowned, but we haven't even had dessert. I made your favorite. I'm not hungry. I grabbed my keys. Congratulations, Rowan. I hope it's worth it. As I walked out, I heard Mom say she'll understand eventually. This is what's best for the family. They had no idea what they'd just set in motion. No idea at all. You're not going to believe this, Sarah said, sliding into the booth across from me at our usual coffee shop. She pulled out her phone and pushed it toward me. Look what your brother posted. I glanced at the screen. Rowan's latest Instagram post showed him posing next to what looked like a department store mannequin covered in raw shrimp. The caption read, "First piece complete. The bourgeoisie won't be ready for this truth bomb. Artistic genius." Our Berlin-bound 7,000 likes, I muttered. Of course. Sarah snatched her phone back. Forget him. Did you finish the scholarship application? I pulled a thick manila envelope from my bag. Just needs to be mailed the Nero Blackwell Scholarship. Sarah read. Whistling low, full ride. Right. If I get it, I trace the envelope's edge, which I won't because only one student per year does. Stop that. Sarah leaned forward. You're literally the most qualified person I know. Perfect MCAT scores, research experience, volunteer work, and zero financial support, I added bitterly. They look at that too? Family contribution matters. Then tell them the truth. Sarah's eyes blazed. Tell them how your parents drained your accounts of baby Picasso's shellfish fetish. I shook my head. I'm not playing the victim card. It's not playing a card if it's true. Sarah was in law school. Everything was a case to her. Look, you have 2 options. Give up and let them win or fight back. Smart. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Rowan's first piece is getting amazing feedback. Gallery owner called it provocatively visceral. So proud. I turned my phone face down without responding. I need to drop this off, I said, standing with the envelope. Then I have a shift at the clinic. London, Sarah caught my arm. Promise me you won't give up. I won't, I managed to smile. I'm just getting started at the clinic where I worked nights. Dr. Morris was reviewing patient files when I arrived. She looked up as I pulled on my scrubs. London, perfect timing. We have a complex suture case coming in. Want to observe? Actually, I hesitated. I was hoping you might write me a recommendation letter for the Neuro Blackwell Scholarship. She brightened. Of course you're applying. That's fantastic. When's the deadline, Friday? This Friday. She frowned. That's ambitious. Most students prepare months in advance. I know I swallowed hard. Things changed unexpectedly. Understanding crossed her face. She'd been my mentor long enough to read between the lines. "I'll have it ready tomorrow," she said firmly. "And London, make sure your personal statement shows them exactly who you are." That night, I sat at my tiny apartment desk staring at my laptop screen. The scholarship essay prompt seemed to mock me. Describe a challenge that shaped your medical aspirations. My phone buzzed again. Another family group text, this time from Dad, just wired the first tuition payment to Berlin. Dreams do come true. Something snapped. I started typing. 3 hours later, I had my essay. No self-pity, no drama. Just cold, hard truth about working since age 14. Saving every penny. Watching it vanish and refusing to let that be the end of my story. The next morning, I slipped the completed application into the mailbox before I could second-guess myself. As I turned away, a sleek black car pulled up to my parents' house next door. Rowan stepped out, probably home for another celebration. "London," he called out, waving. "Hey, check this out." He pulled out his phone, showing me more photos of his art. The mannequins now wore cocktail dresses with shrimp arranged in spiral patterns. "It's about the decay of feminine identity in consumer culture," he explained proudly. "Deep stuff." "Right, fascinating," I said flatly. "How much did that installation cost?" "Oh, you know," he waved dismissively. "Art is about vision, not budgets. Mom and Dad get that, I'm sure they do." I started walking away. "Don't be jealous," he called after me. "It's not attractive." I kept walking, my steps getting stronger with each block. 2 weeks later, a thin envelope arrived with no return address. My hands shook as I opened it. "Dear Miss Wheeler," it began. "We are pleased to inform you." I read it 3 times before the words sank in. Then I did something I hadn't done since that night at dinner. I smiled. Really smiled. No one else saw it, but that was okay. They'd all see. Soon enough, I pulled out my phone and typed a quick message to Sarah. "I got it full ride. Don't tell anyone yet." Her response came instantly. "Holy shit. When do we start plotting your revenge?" "Already started," I replied. "And trust me, it'll be worth the wait." The restaurant buzzed with celebration, crystal glasses clinked. Cameras flashed, and my mother's voice carried across the room to Rowan's first month in Berlin. I sat at the far end of the table, pushing food around my plate, while relatives fawned over Rowan's latest Instagram posts. He'd video called in for his going-away dinner. His face projected onto a tablet propped at the head of the table. "Show them the new piece, darling," Mom called out. Rowan's pixelated face beamed as he turned his camera. "This one's called Sister Study. It's about familial suffocation." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. The image showed a mannequin draped in medical scrubs, covered in dead shrimp arranged like surgical sutures. My stomach turned. "It's about how traditional career paths strangle creativity," Rowan explained. "See how the shrimp represents societal decay." Aunt Linda dabbed her eyes so profound I stood abruptly. "Bathroom," I muttered, ignoring Mom's disapproving look in the restroom. I splashed cold water on my face and checked my phone. A new email from Dean Cunningham glowed on the screen regarding your trauma surgery paper. I'd started medical school quietly 3 weeks ago, working nights at the clinic to maintain my cover. The scholarship covered everything, but I'd kept that detail to myself. Let them think I was stuck in limbo working to save up. The truth would taste sweeter with perfect timing. Back at the table, Dad was making another toast. "We knew from the start which one of you had the real spark." My fingers clenched around my water glass, but I said nothing. Instead, I thought about the dean's email praising my paper and suggesting I submitted for publication. London, Mom called. "Don't you want to say something to your brother?" I looked directly into the tablet's camera. "Break a leg, Rowan." The next morning, I slipped into the medical school's lecture hall, taking my usual seat near the front. A girl named Gianna dropped into the chair beside me. "Did you see the assignment scores?" she asked, not quite keeping the competition out of her voice. "Someone got a perfect mark on the trauma paper." I kept my expression neutral. Really, Dean Cunningham never gives perfect scores. She squinted at me. "Was it you?" Before I could answer, the dean himself walked in, commanding immediate silence. "Today's topic, emergency thoracic surgery," he began. "But first, I'd like to discuss an exemplary paper submitted by one of your colleagues, Miss Wheeler." I felt Gianna stiffened beside me. "Your analysis of novel trauma techniques was outstanding." Dean Cunningham continued, "I'd like you to present your findings at next month's surgical conference." The room buzzed with whispers. I sat straighter, ignoring the stares. "Thank you, sir. I'd be honored." After class, my phone lit up with a family group text. Mom had shared another of Rowan's posts. My son breaking boundaries in Berlin. Below it was a photo of Rowan at some gallery opening, champagne in hand, standing next to his shrimp-covered mannequins. The caption read, "Art is pain. Family is complicated. Hunt for truth in shellfish." "Your brother is really something," Gianna said, peering over my shoulder. "I saw his work online. Isn't he the one who—" She stopped, finally connecting the dots. "Oh, the one who got my medical school fund?" "Yeah." I smiled tightly. "That's him?" She studied me for a moment. "But you're here anyway." "I am." How I shouldered my bag. Hard work, determination, the usual boring stuff that doesn't make for viral art installations. That evening, Dean Cunningham called me into his office. "Your parents must be proud," he said, sliding a conference schedule across his desk. "You'll be our youngest presenter." "They don't know," I replied simply. He raised an eyebrow. "May I ask why they're focused on other priorities right now?" Understanding crossed his face. He'd been dean long enough to recognize family dynamics. "Well," he said, carefully, "success is the best revenge, isn't it?" I met his gaze. "I wouldn't know, sir. I'm just here to learn." He smiled slightly. "Of course. By the way, the Benefactors Gala is next month as our top first-year student. You should attend. I'll think about it." Walking home, I passed the local art gallery. In the window was a flyer for an upcoming show, Breaking Boundaries, Berlin's Rising Stars. I took a photo and sent it to Sarah. "Guess who's featured?" she replied instantly. "Please tell me you're planning something epic. Patience." I texted back. "The best revenge takes time." My phone buzzed again, Mom sharing another of Rowan's artistic updates. I deleted it without reading. Let them have their moment. Mine was coming, and unlike Rowan's art, it wouldn't need any explanation. 2 envelopes arrived in my mailbox on a rainy Tuesday morning. The first, a formal letter from St. Sebastian's Medical School, confirmed my selection as keynote student speaker at the upcoming Benefactors Gala. The second was a forwarded invitation from my cousin Todd addressed to my parents. My phone rang almost immediately. "Did you get Todd's invitation?" Mom's voice bubbled with excitement. "He's hosting a table at some university gala. Very exclusive. He specifically requested we bring Rowan. He's flying in from Berlin for it." I pressed my lips together. How nice. I know, such perfect timing. The art show opens that weekend, too. Everything's falling into place for your brother. I glanced at the keynote speaker letter in my hand. "Will you be attending the gala?" "Of course. Todd says it's the social event of the season. All the university's biggest donors will be there." She paused. "You should come to Darling Network a bit. Maybe meet some people who could help with your situation." In my situation, that's what they called my medical school dreams. "Now, I'll think about it," I said, hanging up before she could respond. At the hospital where I was doing my clinical rotation, I ran into Dean Cunningham in the surgical wing. "London," he smiled. "I trust you received the gala confirmation." "Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. You earned it." He studied me. "Though I admit I'm curious about your speech. Will you be mentioning the unusual circumstances of your enrollment?" I thought about Rowan's art show, my parents' pride, Todd's invitation. Would that be inappropriate? On the contrary. His eyes twinkled. Sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that make people uncomfortable, especially those who deserve to be. Later that day, I met Sarah for lunch. She nearly choked on her sandwich when I told her about the gala. "This is perfect," she exclaimed. "Your parents, your brother, all those donors. Everyone who matters will be there along with me at the podium," I added quietly. "Please tell me you're going to destroy them, not destroy." I stirred my coffee. "Just illuminate certain truths." My phone buzzed. A text from Rowan, heads up, bringing something special to the gala. "Mom says Todd's table is near the stage. Perfect spot to debut my newest installation." Sarah read the text over my shoulder and snorted. More shellfish. Art knowing Rowan, probably something worse. That evening, I worked on my speech in the medical library. Joanna found me there, surrounded by notes. "Everyone's talking about you being chosen for the gala," she said, sitting down. "Youngest keynote ever, apparently. Is that why you're here?" Reconnaissance. She had the grace to look embarrassed. "Actually, I wanted to apologize. I was a bit intense earlier this semester. Competitive. A bit okay. A lot." She smiled sheepishly. "But watching you work twice as hard as everyone else, never complaining. It's impressive." I thought about my parents' dismissal, Rowan's mockery, all the doubts they'd tried to plant. "Thanks." I said simply. My phone lit up with another family group text. Mom had shared a local newspaper article. "Berlin's Breaking Boundaries art show comes home." Below it, she'd written, "Can't wait for everyone to see Rowan's genius at the gala." Kiana read the message and frowned. "Wait, isn't that the same night as Yes? And they don't know that you're—" "Nope." She let out a low whistle. "That's going to be one hell of a night." I smiled, thinking of my speech notes carefully crafted to expose every uncomfortable truth. That's the plan. Later, I called Todd, who answered on the first ring. "London, did you get my invitation?" "Your parents are thrilled about the gala." "I did. Thanks for thinking of me." "Of course. Though honestly, it was your brother I was hoping to catch. His art is causing quite a stir in Berlin." I took a deep breath. "Todd, there's something you should know about that night." "Oh." His interest piqued. "Do tell. Just make sure you're paying attention during the keynote speech." "Intriguing. I'll be sure to get good photos for the family album." After hanging up, I pulled up my speech draft. The opening line glowed on my screen. "Success stories often begin with failure. Not our own, but the failure of those who should have believed in us most." My phone buzzed one last time. A text from Dean Cunningham's speech draft received powerful stuff. "Are you sure you're ready for the aftermath?" I thought about my parents' faces when they dismissed my dreams. Rowan's smirk when he'd taken my future. All the times they'd chosen him over me. "Absolutely," I texted back. The stage was set. In 2 weeks, everything would change. And I couldn't wait. "London, you need to see this." Sarah's voice crackled through my phone at 6 a.m. "Check your email now." I opened my laptop, still groggy from a late-night study session. The subject line of Sarah's forwarded email read, "Breaking Berlin Art Show Controversy." Clicking the link, I found myself on an art critic's blog. Photos of Rogan's latest exhibition filled the screen, but these weren't his usual shellfish arrangements. These were different. Personal. My breath caught. He'd recreated scenes from our childhood. Twisted, dark versions that made my stomach turn. In one installation, a medical dummy wore my face looming over a small figure meant to be him. The dummy held surgical tools dripping with red paint while shrimp crawled from its eye sockets. The caption read, "The Medical Monster, a Study in Familial Oppression." "Keep scrolling," Sarah urged. The comment section exploded with criticism. "Trust fund hack, exploiting family trauma for shock value. Misogynistic undertones match another mediocre man playing victim while literally stealing his sister's future." "Wait, what?" "Someone leaked the truth," Sarah said about the medical school fund. My phone buzzed with another call. "Mom." I switched lines. "Have you seen what they're saying about your brother?" She sounded frantic. You have to help fix this. Fix? What exactly are these horrible lies? Someone's claiming we took your money for his art school. They're calling him privileged. Entitled. Are they wrong? Silence crackled between us. London. Her voice hardened. This is serious. The Berlin Gallery is threatening to pull his show. You need to make a statement defending him. I laughed, actually laughed like he defended me. He's your brother, and I was your daughter. Past tense intended. I hung up as another email notification popped up a live stream link from Berlin. Rohan stood before his controversial exhibition looking disheveled. My art explores the complexity of family dynamics. He was saying to reporters the medical imagery represents societal pressure to conform. Is it true you used your sister's medical school fund? A journalist interrupted. Rowan's face flushed. That's a gross simplification of a private family matter. So you did take it. My parents made an investment in real art, not just the stream cut off abruptly. Gianna caught me between classes later that day. Your brother's all over social media, she said, showing me her phone. I'm privileged. Art bro is trending. Calm is interesting that way. I replied, heading to Dean Cunningham's office for our scheduled meeting about the gala. He was already watching the news coverage when I arrived. Quite the story your brother's generated. Not my story, I said firmly. No, he smiled. Yours is much more compelling. Speaking of which, your final speech draft. I handed him the papers. He read in silence, his expression unreadable. Powerful stuff, he said. Finally, though, I noticed you don't mention the art show directly. I don't need to. The timing will speak for itself. My phone buzzed again. Dad. This time. I declined the call. They'll be there, I told the dean. Front row Todd's table. They still don't know I'm involved. And your brother's planning some kind of installation for the event, I nodded apparently. Well, he leaned back. Should be an interesting evening. Walking home, I passed a local gallery promoting Rowan's upcoming show. The poster had been defaced with red paint fraud scrawled across his face. Sarah texted, "Com is doing your work for you." Not quite, I replied. Wait for the gala. That night, Rowan posted a cryptic Instagram story. The family betrayal cuts across oceans. Truth will be revealed. Comments flooded in. Dude, you betrayed your sister. Check your privilege, man. Can't wait to see how you blame this on society. Mom called again. I let it go to voicemail. London, please. Her message pleaded. Your brother needs you. His whole career is at stake. Just tell everyone there's no hard feelings about the money. That's all we're asking. I deleted the message and opened my gala speech instead. The words stared back at me, sharp and true. Sometimes the greatest lessons come from those who try to break us. They teach us exactly how strong we can be. My phone lit up with a text from Todd. Drama aside, you're still coming to the gala, right? Got you a seat at our table. Wouldn't miss it, I replied. I have a front row seat to everything. He didn't catch my meaning. He would. Soon enough, they all would. 3 days before the gala. I stood in Dean Cunningham's office rehearsing my speech for the final time. And so I stand here today not despite the obstacles, but because of them. I paused, looking up. Is it too much? The dean shook his head. It's exactly enough, though. I'm curious. How are you handling the press? He slid a newspaper across his desk. The headline read, Rising Art Stars Exhibition Cancel Amid Controversy. Your brother's Berlin show was pulled. He said the story's gaining traction. Reporters might ask questions at the gala. Let them, I replied, gathering my notes. I have nothing to hide. Outside his office, I ran into Gianna. She'd been different since Rowan's art scandal broke. Less competitive, more contemplative. Ready for Saturday? She asked. Almost. You're still coming. She nodded. Wouldn't miss it, though. Fair warning. People are talking about your brother, the money, all of it. Let them talk. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah SOS. Your mom's here at the law library. I found them in the study area. Mom. Clutching a designer handbag like a shield. Sarah shot me an apologetic look before disappearing behind a bookshelf. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "We need to discuss the gala," Mom said, smoothing her skirt. "Rowan's planning something dramatic, a performance piece to address these vicious rumors." "You mean the truth, London, please." She leaned forward. "Your father and I have given you space, but this has gone too far. The articles, the social media attacks. Your brother's career is imploding. Funny how consequences work. This isn't you," she said softly. "You were always the sensible one, the kind one, the invisible one," I corrected. "Until now." She stood frustrated. "Fine, be difficult. But remember, family is forever." "No," I gathered my books. "Family is a choice. You made yours." That evening, I tried on my gala dress. Classic black silk. Simple, but elegant. As I smoothed the fabric, my phone lit up with a video call from Rowan. I almost declined it. Almost. "What do you want?" His face filled the screen, unshaven and tired. "They pulled my show. I heard everything's falling apart." He ran a hand through his hair. "But I have a plan at the gala." "Don't. You don't even know what I'm going to say." "I don't need to. Whatever grand gesture you're planning, whatever artistic statement you think will fix this, just don't." He laughed bitterly, still trying to control everything. "Aren't you the perfect sister, always knowing best? Goodbye, Roland." "Wait," his voice cracked. "I need you to tell everyone it was a misunderstanding about the money. Say you approved it." I ended the call. Minutes later, Dad texted, "Your brother's hurting. Be the bigger person." I it back. "I already am." The next morning, I met with the gala coordinator for a final walkthrough. She showed me the stage. The lighting set up the exact spot where I deliver my speech. "The benefactor's table will be here," she pointed. "Your family seats are right beside it." "Perfect." Sarah arrived as we finished carrying garment bags. Dress rehearsal time in the empty ballroom. I practiced walking to the podium, my heels clicking against marble floors. Sarah filmed on her phone, offering critiques. "Slower," she advised. "Make them wait for it." My phone buzzed. "Todd Rowan's flight lands tomorrow morning. Says he's bringing something special for the gala. Should be exciting. Can't wait," I replied. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood at my window, watching lights flicker in my parents' house next door. They were probably up to planning how to manage tomorrow's drama. Sarah texted, "You ready?" I thought about the past months. The betrayal, the silence, the hard work, and shadows. I thought about my speech, waiting in Dean Cunningham's office about Rowan's planned performance. Whatever it might be. "Ready," I replied. Nervous, I watched a light go out in my parents' house. "No, just focused." "Good," she sent back. "Because tomorrow you're not just getting revenge, you're getting justice." I touched the silk dress hanging on my closet door. In less than 24 hours, everything would change. They thought they'd buried me. They thought I'd stay quiet, stay invisible, stay in my place. They were wrong. "See you tomorrow." I texted Sarah, "Front row, front row." She confirmed with my phone ready to record every glorious second. I smiled, thinking of Dean Cunningham's words from our first meeting about the gala. Sometimes the best revenge isn't what we do to others. It's what we prove about ourselves. Tomorrow, I'd prove everything. The gala ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and elegant table settings. I watched from a side entrance as guests filtered in, my heart steady despite everything. Sarah stood beside me, phone ready. "Your parents just arrived," she whispered. "Front table, just like you planned." Through the doorway, I saw them, Mom in designer blue, Dad in his best suit. They were speaking animatedly with Todd, probably explaining away Rowan's latest scandal. Behind them, Rowan skulked in wearing all black, carrying a suspicious-looking bag. Ready Dean Cunningham appeared at my shoulder. I nodded. "Ladies and gentlemen," the dean's voice boomed through the microphone minutes later. "Welcome to St. Sebastian's annual Benefactors Gala." I watched my parents settle into their seats, still oblivious. Rowan fidgeted with his bag. Tonight, we celebrate excellence. The dean continued, and I can think of no better example than our keynote student speaker. Despite extraordinary obstacles, Mom was checking her phone. Dad was scanning the room, probably looking for potential donors for Rowan's next project. A young woman who exemplifies everything our institution stands for. Rowan started to stand, clearly thinking this was his cue for whatever performance he'd planned. Please welcome our top first-year medical student and recipient of the prestigious Nero Blackwell Scholarship, London Wheeler. The sound of my mother's wine glass shattering was almost lost in the applause. I walked to the podium, my black silk dress catching the light in the front row. Sarah grinned wickedly. Camera raised beside her, Gianna gave me a subtle thumbs up. My parents' faces were a study in shock. Dad's mouth hung open. Mom had gone pale. Rowan frozen midst and his bag forgotten. Thank you, Dean Cunningham. I began, my voice clear and strong. 8 months ago, I learned a valuable lesson about family trust and determination. Mom started to shake her head slightly, a warning in her eyes. I had saved for medical school since I was 14, worked every summer, every holiday. My parents promised to match what I saved. I paused, letting the words hang until they didn't. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Todd looked between me and my parents, confusion turning to understanding. They took that money, all of it, and gave it to my brother for art school. I smiled directly at Rowan. Experimental art with shellfish. Nervous laughter from the audience. Rowan sank back into his chair. But here's what they didn't know, I continued. When they emptied that account, they didn't empty me. They didn't end my dream. They just showed me exactly how strong I could be. Dean Cunningham nodded approvingly from the side stage. I worked harder, applied for scholarships, earned my place here. Not despite their actions, but because of them. Because sometimes the people who should believe in you most become the very reason you learn to believe in yourself. Mom was crying now, silent tears ruining her perfect makeup. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes to the benefactors here tonight. Thank you. Your support means more than you know. It means that talent doesn't get buried by circumstance, that dreams don't die because of other people's choices. Rowan's bag slipped from his lap, spilling what looked like raw shrimp onto the floor. A few guests grimaced, and to my family, I turned to face them directly. Thank you, too. You taught me that success isn't about who believes in you. It's about never stopping believing in yourself. The applause started slowly, then built to a roar. Dean Cunningham stepped forward to shake my hand as cameras flashed. In the chaos, I saw my parents slip from their seats, heading for the exit. Rowan remained frozen, staring at his spilled art installation. Sarah met me as I stepped down from the podium. That was epic. Todd approached next, looking shell-shocked. London. I had no idea if I'd known. It's okay, I said. Everyone knows now. My phone buzzed, a text from Rowan. Well played. I deleted it without responding. Gianna appeared with a glass of champagne to the highest-ranked first-year student. She smiled. And the best revenge speech I've ever heard. It wasn't about revenge, I said, but took the glass anyway. It was about truth. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and introductions. Several benefactors offered mentorship opportunities. A local newspaper reporter requested an interview as the crowd thinned. Dean Cunningham found me again. Your parents left, he said gently. Your brother too. I know. Any regrets, I thought about the years of invisibility of being the sensible one, the one whose dreams could wait. No, I said firmly. Not a single one. Sarah linked her arm through mine, ready to go. I looked around the ballroom one last time at the empty seats where my family had sat at the scattered shrimp by Rowan's chair at the podium, where I'd finally spoken my truth. Ready? I smiled. Let's get out of here. The night air felt clean, fresh with possibility. Behind us, the gala lights dimmed one by one. The morning after the gala, I woke to dozens of missed calls and one unexpected visitor at my door. Todd, your mom's a mess, he said without preamble. Your dad's not speaking to anyone. Rowan's gone back to Berlin. Not my problem anymore. I started to close the door. Wait, he held up a hand. I'm not here for them. I'm here to offer you a job that got my attention. My medical technology company, he continued. We fund research fellowships for promising students after last night. Well, you're exactly the kind of person we look for. I appreciate it, but just think about it. He handed me a card. Some of us actually recognize talent when we see it. Inside my apartment, I found an email from Dean Cunningham, my office, 10 a.m. Important discussion. The medical school halls buzzed with whispers as I walked to his office. My speech had apparently gone viral overnight. Sarah's video had thousands of shares. London. The dean gestured to a chair. How are you holding up? Fine. Better than fine, actually. Good, because I have a proposition. He slid a document across his desk. We're starting a new mentorship program for underprivileged medical students. We'd like you to help develop it. I scanned the proposal. You want me to turn my story into something bigger? Exactly. Help others like you navigate similar obstacles. My phone buzzed. A text from Gianna. Emergency study group meeting. Need you here. I found her and several classmates huddled in the library. They looked up as I approached, so Gianna smiled. We heard about Todd's fellowship offer. News travels fast. We also heard you're starting a mentorship program. Another student added. We want to help. I haven't even said yes yet, but you will. Gianna's eyes sparkled. Because you're not done proving them wrong, are you? She was right. I wasn't walking home. I passed my parents' house. A for sale sign stood in the yard. Through the window, I saw Mom packing boxes, her movements mechanical. My phone rang. Sarah, have you seen the art blocks? She asked without greeting. Rowan's gallery dropped him completely. Called him a cautionary tale about privilege and mediocrity. And my parents' Todd says they're moving to Florida. Apparently, the social fallout has been brutal. I should have felt satisfied. Instead, I felt light-free. Back home, I found a letter in my mailbox handwritten from Rowan. Dear London, you won. Not just the game, but the war. I get it now. What real talent looks like. What real work means. I'm sorry. Not that it matters anymore. I folded the letter carefully and picked up my phone. Dean Cunningham. About that mentorship program. I'm in. The next day, I met with Todd to discuss the fellowship. Just so we're clear, he said this has nothing to do with family loyalty. You earned this. Good, I replied, because family loyalty is exactly what I'm moving beyond. That evening, I hosted the first mentorship meeting. 20 students showed up each with their own story of obstacles overcome. Welcome, I began. Let's talk about turning setbacks into comebacks. Gianna arrived late, grinning. Sorry, was helping the dean set up your new office, my what surprise part of the mentorship program. You need a proper space to change lives. Right? My phone buzzed one last time. Mom, I know you won't answer her text, read. But I need you to know you were never invisible. We were just blind. And I'm sorry we had to lose you to finally see you. I showed the message to Sarah over coffee later. Are you going to respond? She asked. No, I smiled. Some answers are better left unspoken. In my new office, I pinned up a single photo. Me at the podium, head high. Speaking my truth below it, I placed the acceptance letter that had started everything. A knock at the door. Dean Cunningham, ready for your first official mentee. I looked around the space. My space earned through grit and determination. Not family connections or stolen opportunities. Send them in. A nervous freshman entered, clutching paperwork. Hi, she said softly. I heard you help people find their way when everyone else says they can't. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Tell me your story, I said. And then let's prove them wrong, because that's the thing about being underestimated. It doesn't just make you stronger, it makes you exactly who you were meant to be. And I was just getting started.